All right, Man in Black podcast. We're talking about college football. This is week 6, I believe, if anybody's counting the weeks. I don't know, but it's episode 2 for us in our podcast. Todd Blackledge, Josh Mancuso. He's the expert. I'm the comedian. And we're hanging out talking games that just happened. Now, tell us where you were this past weekend, Todd. You called, obviously, the primetime game on NBC, as you do each week. Where were you at, and how did it go?
I was in Iowa City, home of the Iowa Hawkeyes, and they were playing Michigan State. It was a fun game to do. I mean, very close game. Not a whole lot of great offense. Both defenses played well, and then it was a special teams play that really turned the game. Iowa had a 70-yard punt return for a touchdown by Cooper DeJean, and that kind of was the difference in the game. So it was fun. It was a great atmosphere. It was a blackout. Iowa had played the week before in the whiteout and got wiped out in the whiteout. So they came home and had their fans all wear black and had a blackout at home, had all black uniforms, pants and jerseys. And they played pretty well. It was a good bounce back win because the week before they were atrocious against Penn State. And they still didn't do a whole lot offensively, and that's the big scuttlebutt with Iowa and their offensive coordinator and his restructured contract. And they have to reach a certain level, 25 points a game. They got to average and they got to win 7 games or else, he's not going to get his contract again or whatever. But they scored 26, but the offense didn't score all of those. The special teams scored 1. But anyway, but it was a good game. It was a fun game. An exciting game, and anytime you get a game that goes all the way down into the fourth quarter, you're happy if you're doing TV.
Absolutely, it keeps people watching.
Yeah,
and no surprise that Iowa's offense didn't have a glorious game. They definitely are not known for their big time offense, I guess. And I guess their offensive coordinator should start renegotiating his contract. I don't think they're going to make that minimum that he's talking about.
Yeah, no, I don't think he has any leverage to negotiate at this point. The only leverage that he has, or the thing that he has going for him, is his dad's the head coach, and so there's a good chance that even if he doesn't stay on as the offensive coordinator, he could still have a job there in some capacity. So, but you know what? In fairness to him, he was dealt a bad hand in the game Saturday night because their starting quarterback, Cade McNamara, who they got from the transfer portal out of Michigan, he was off to a really good start. And then the second possession, he went out with a leg injury and never played again. And he might be out for several weeks. So that kind of was a bummer for them because it looked like they had a better plan offensively, and they started out the game executing it. And then he went down. They had to go with a backup who has not played very much at all. And, Deacon Hill, kind of a cool name. That's the backup quarterback. Does not look like a quarterback. He's about 6'2", and he's listed as 258 pounds. And he looks kind of portly, for a quarterback. But he came out and played pretty well. He can sling it around, though. He can throw it.
That's a kind way to put it. Yeah, he's a bigger guy, but he can sling it. Got an arm, and I hate it for Cade. Cade, made that transfer from Michigan. Now he's hurt. Man, what a bummer. That's a tough one.
Yeah.
But I hope he comes back. All right. Well, that's a good. Well, I will say, you said Iowa had a hard time against Penn State. Everybody's having a hard time against Penn State. I'm not just trying to juice you up here because you're a Penn State guy. I mean, Penn State is legit, man. They are good, really good.
Their defense is exceptional. Their offense has had moments where they've looked good and then other moments where they don't look great, a little inconsistent. For most of that game and most of the first half against Northwestern, they didn't do much offensively. But the defense has showed up every week. And they're fast, they're athletic, they've got length. They can really rush the passer. And, Manny Diaz, the defensive coordinator, is a very aggressive play caller. And so really, if he gets you an offense to 3rd down and 6 or more needed, it plays right into his hands because he's going to bring pressure and they can really get to the quarterback. They got corners that they trust to lock up and play man-to-man, and that allows you to be very creative with your pressures if you've got the corners locked down on the outside. So, their defense is outstanding. In fact, their defense is every bit as good as Michigan's or Ohio State's in that conference right now.
Yeah, I would agree with my again expert analysis would agree that that is the case. Their defense is awesome. So we're talking low scoring games. Kind of the game of the week, I guess some would say, was Notre Dame at Duke,
Yeah.
which is a much lower scoring affair than I thought we would have there. But Notre Dame was able to get in there and get it done. Actually, a lot of people thought Duke might get the upset, but Notre
Yeah.
Dame stood strong and. Riley Leonard, I think, got injured at the end of the game, didn't he? And
Yeah. Yeah.
not
That was a
sure.
bummer too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, is hopefully he'll be able to come back from it. I know he came out of the tent after the game on crutches, but hopefully
Yeah.
he'll be able to bounce back. And that was a really interesting game. First of all, Mike Elko, the head coach at Duke, is really a good football coach and really good defensive coach. He does a great job of taking away the best thing you do. And for Notre Dame, that's really running the football. And other than a couple runs on that last scoring drive, one by the quarterback and one by their starting tailback, Notre Dame didn't run the ball very well, and they didn't convert third downs well against the defense, and that's part of why it was such a close game and hard fought game. And but Notre Dame's defense played well too. I mean,
Yeah.
Duke didn't score the go ahead touchdown until very late in the game, I think. So 3 minutes or so left in the game. So both defenses played well. And the difference with Notre Dame is last year they wouldn't have won in that game. This year, because they have Sam Hartman, they won the game, and it's the most ironic thing about the last 2 weeks for Notre Dame. So 2 weeks ago, the game we did against Ohio State, they give up a late drive, and lose a heartbreaker. And this one, they make a late drive and win. And in both games, in the Ohio State game, one of the key plays on that last drive, it was 3rd and 19. All right. And Al Golden, the defensive coordinator, they decided to only rush 3 and drop 8 defenders. And Kyle McCord hit a pass for 20 yards to the 1 yard line against that defense. And then Ohio State scored a couple plays after that. Well, in this game, it was a 4th and 16. Duke had him pinned down 4th and 16, and Mike Elko decided to rush 3 and drop 8. And Sam Hartman scrambled and ran for a first down, and the next play they scored on a 30-yard touchdown run. So just ironic that two similar situations, and the game, turned on those plays. One was a loss, one was a victory for Notre Dame. And
so three things I'm taking away from that is one, from now on, don't rush 3 and drop 8. Anybody, don't ever do it. Nobody do it.
well,
all right.
you know why they call it prevent defense, right? It prevents you from winning. That's why it's called prevent. But
apparently that's the case, because don't rush 3 and drop 8. The other thing is I noticed was Sam Hartman at the end of the game waiting around for Riley Leonard after, which is such a class move. And it's not like this is Notre Dame versus USC or some a big rivalry. This is against a new team. I guess they don't play often, I'm assuming. And so here they are with Riley Leonard, who's sort of a new name to probably a lot of folks, but a fantastic quarterback in his own right. And that was a very classy move by Sam Hartman. It's one of the reasons why I like Sam. And then my last point is more of a question for you, which is Duke the real deal? The way they're able to win every game up to this point, and then hold on to Notre Dame there towards the end. I mean, they could run the table potentially in their conference. I mean, they've got they've still got some tough games, but who would have thought that Duke would be in the conversation as a top tier team right now?
Well, I don't know how good they are, if they're quite good enough to run the table like that. I do think they're a good football team, and a lot of that depends on if they can get Riley Leonard back and how much he misses, if he misses anything. But defensively, they're good. They're fast. They got a good looking defensive line, so they're athletic on defense. And they were good last year in Mike Elko's first year. I mean, they had a winning season last year, and they're just taking it another step this year. So I do think they're a very capable team, and they're not an easy out for anybody, that's for sure. And the other thing about Sam Hartman, is, remember, Sam came from Wake Forest. He transferred from he was 5 years at Wake Forest. So, he's very familiar with these other ACC teams and the other ACC quarterbacks. And so, he probably has a relationship with Riley Leonard that goes back beyond, just playing him on Saturday. And I think that's why he was genuinely concerned after the game for for
Yeah.
his well-being. But yeah, that was a heck of a win. Now, the interesting thing for Notre Dame, two heart-stopping games in a row, right?
Yeah.
And now, and two undefeated teams they faced in a row. Now they face
Hmm.
another undefeated team who's got to be feeling pretty good about themselves in Louisville, who's
Yep.
5-0. And I don't know how good Louisville is, but they're certainly confident. They're going to be confident being undefeated and hosting Notre Dame in a big game on Saturday. And Notre Dame can't afford to think at all about the following game against USC because they got to take care of business with Louisville. And if they win, that game and matchup with the Trojans is going to be, titanic. It's going to be a huge game. But
Yeah.
they can't afford to look ahead. They've got another undefeated team waiting for them on Saturday.
And that's the thing about undefeated teams. Obviously some of these schools have easier schedules than others, or who knows how they play. But to be 5-0 is that's awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
you're clearly a good team if you're 5-0. Now you could you could lose your next 7 games, I suppose, and go 5-7. But you're a good team, and I love seeing some of these teams, like Missouri and Kentucky
Yeah.
out of the SEC, and Washington State. I think they're 4-0
Yeah.
or 5-0. These teams
Yeah.
that you don't expect. Louisville. It's pretty cool, and I would imagine some of these will fall by the wayside at some point, and the top teams will rise up. But it's cool to see these teams doing that. So,
Well, the interesting thing, Josh, to me is, and like if you're 2-0, I don't think it's that big a deal. But now we've played
yeah,
a whole month. We're into the month of October, so they've played a full month of games, and not only are there still a lot of undefeated teams, but you also, to me, I don't remember a college football season in the last several years where at this point it felt so wide open as it does right now. Like there's
mm,
no one or two teams that have separated themselves and are clearly much better than everybody else, like it's felt the last couple years.
mm,
And so I think that's what part of what's exciting. I mean, Georgia's still number one, okay, and
yep,
rightfully so, but they got taken to the wire by Auburn. And Auburn ran the ball well against them, and
mm-hmm.
Georgia doesn't have Brock Bowers, who's like a unicorn super freak. I mean, they don't have him. They probably don't win that game. And now they're going to turn around and get tested by Kentucky, who likes to run the football. And so,
That's right.
but you will see some of these teams, especially as they play each other, undefeated teams kind of go by the wayside. But there's a lot of them right now. I mean, I'm going to just rattle off these names. I mean, first of all, you mentioned a couple that are undefeated, right?
Yep,
Kentucky, Missouri, Maryland has got a big test this week against Ohio State, who's also
huge.
undefeated. North Carolina, Marshall, Fresno State is a really good football team, ranked in the top 25. They're 5-0. Air Force is 5-0. But I don't know how many of those teams are legitimate national championship or college football playoff teams. But you
Mm,
look at Georgia, Texas, Florida State, Miami, Ohio State, Michigan, Washington State, USC, Penn State, Oklahoma. That's 10
mm-hmm.
teams that right now I'd say are all in the conversation for the college football playoff. Now, again, Oklahoma and Texas play this week. Huge matchup.
Huge.
First time since 2011, both teams have been undefeated coming into the game. So, I mean, it's a great rivalry game. I've done it many times. It's super fun to do, other than the 11 a.m. Central kickoff, which kind of sucks. But I mean, but it's at the Cotton Bowl. It's the state fairs there. You got all the fried everything, all the food choices. Everything's fried. And it's a great game to do. But when it's big like this, when both teams are ranked and undefeated, it makes it even more special. So that'll be a fun one this weekend.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. The Red River rivalry, which I wish they
Yeah,
had named it something else because I can't
it's
say
hard to
that
say.
at any point. Yeah.
Now
Uh,
I think if it just was like Red River game, it's the rivalry word that gets you. With the
yeah.
third R word in a row is what gets you.
It gets you. That's what it is. They should. I think we should ask them to stop doing that. In fact, and we'll just
Okay,
you and I can just start calling it the Red River game.
let's do it. Yeah, let's
Okay,
just call it that.
let's
Yeah,
do that. Rivalry in itself is hard to say,
it's
and you put it
it's
after 2 R words. This
yeah,
is insane.
it's
What
very
is
hard.
going on right now? I don't even understand. It's like saying rural. Rural is the worst word. You got
It's a
urban
hard
and
word too.
rural. I mean,
Rural, rural.
it sounds like a dog trying to talk. Rural. All right, so let's go back to we talked about okay, Oregon State with the big win against Utah. Utah maybe kind of falling down. I don't know. We'll see.
Well,
It's
they
going to be
just
hard for them
can't.
to
They
keep
haven't had
up.
their quarterback. No, the problem is they can't score because they're still without Cam Rising, their starting quarterback.
Sure.
And so they're hoping to get him back. Remember he hurt his knee in the Rose Bowl when they played Penn State, and so he still
Yeah.
is not 100% back. And Utah that's the first game they've lost. They beat UCLA the week before, but it was 14-7. And
Yeah.
and Oregon State, credit to them. I mean, they had a tough, heartbreaking loss to Washington State the week before, but they did enough to win this game. They're a good football team. I mean, Jonathan Smith is a really good football coach, and they got DJ Uiagalelei at quarterback now, and so they're having a good season. That's not a bad loss for Utah because that's a good football team.
No, I agree 100%. Big picture, I look at it and say and think that Oregon and USC and Washington are going to end up being the three that are going to fight for that championship and try to get into the playoff. I think Utah, Washington State will kind of drop off at some point, then lose another game or two. And obviously, it's like any conference. It's they're just eating each other, right? It's just who's going to at the end be left standing. I happen to think I actually put a poll out. We're going to look at it right now on Twitter. Which Pac-12 team do we think will actually has the best chance at making the college football playoff? And we're going to find out right now where we're at. Who do you think has the best chance? Well, I'll tell you right now. Okay, Oregon is leading. In my poll,
Oregon is who
Oregon.
I would say. I would say Oregon. I mean, Caleb Williams. I'm gonna use the word again. He's a unicorn. There's no dominant football team right now, but there are some incredibly dominant unicorn type players, and Caleb Williams is one. He won the Heisman last year. He's playing even better this year. I mean, his numbers are off the chart, even more
crazy
this
numbers.
year, right? So, but the problem with USC is their defense just continues to struggle. I mean, they had a huge lead against Colorado. I mean, it was a 34-point lead, and even into the third quarter, they had a comfortable lead. And then all of a sudden, the fourth quarter, they just let Colorado claw their way back in the game. Now, credit, Deion's team for not quitting and not giving up, and Shedeur Sanders played great. But USC helped him. I mean, Caleb threw one interception, his first turnover of the whole season that sparked Colorado. But more than anything else, this is a defense that kind of looks like they should be good. They look athletic, they look fast, but they can't tackle. They were a horrible tackling team last year, and they are not a good tackling team this year. And so because of that, I don't know that they can. I don't see them making it to the end, to the college football playoffs. They don't play good enough defense.
Yeah, I agree. And from what I understand in my short time playing football, tackling on defense is super important.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
did you play tackle football, or were you on a flag team in high school?
I'm insulted by your question, Todd Blackledge. Okay. I did play tackle football in high school. I did some. I mainly got tackled more than I tackled, but I was involved in some hitting of sorts. But I agree. USC is super talented, and you think they get their defense together, they could be unstoppable. But that defense is they say offense puts fans in the stands, but defense wins championships or something like that. Somebody smarter than me said that.
I mean, sometimes that I think it still applies. You don't have to have dominant like 2015 Alabama defense kind of thing,
Yeah, right.
But you have to, because you have to score nowadays in college football. You got to be able to score on offense, but you got to play good defense. I mean, you got to be solid on defense. You can't be lousy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm a Tennessee guy, right? So last year they had obviously crazy offense, one of the best offenses in the country, and they said they allowed Alabama to score 49 points, but Tennessee scored 52. So it's like if we could just outscore the other team, that's how you win, right? Just score more points than them, and they had a big loss to Florida, and if Florida scored 29, I think. If you told me last year that Florida would score 29 on Tennessee, I would say, well, Tennessee wins that game. I mean, easily. But that's just not the case. And I was at South Carolina versus Tennessee this past weekend. in Knoxville. Great revenge game for the Vols there. You know, I think everybody felt pretty confident after last year's embarrassing loss
Yeah.
in Columbia that Tennessee was going to come back. And I called it the Hooker's Revenge. Some people said I shouldn't probably call it that. But, you know, they injured Hendon Hooker last year. And now this
Yeah.
year they took out Brew McCoy, Tennessee's, you know, top receiver. So he's out for the season. But good game for the Vols to get back in there. They're 4-1. So they got an off week and then Texas A&M. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens there. But great night game, great atmosphere in Neyland. I thought about you, and
Yeah.
I saw some checkerboard overalls, and I almost got you some.
Oh, well, I almost got you some black and gold striped overalls that they wear in Iowa too. Those are pretty popular in Iowa City as well. But you know,
That's
just
good.
back to the defensive thing, and there's an old adage that says defense travels. You know, and what
Yeah.
that means is, you know, there are going to be some nights where the offense just isn't going to click or hit on all cylinders. You know, but if you play consistent defense, you know, you can play good defense on the road. You can play good defense at home. You can play good defense in bad weather. You can always play, you know, defense under any circumstances. And so that's where that saying comes from, because,
Yeah.
you know, if you're relying on just outscoring somebody 52-49, you know, on a weekly basis, at some point you're going to have trouble with that. And, you know, the game you were at, it sounds like Tennessee's defense and the line they really took control of the game. They sacked Spencer Rattler 6 times, you know, made
Yeah.
life miserable for him. So that was a really good win, good bounce back win for Tennessee for sure.
Yeah, good to see that defense going. And there's a name that people should get used to hearing is a guy named James Pierce, who's just kind of risen up he's a defensive end, I believe, and he was in the backfield constantly. He's got a sack in every game so far, a lot of tackles for loss. So it's gonna be cool to see him playing. And to your point about the quote, defense travels. You know who also travels a lot is NBA basketball players. Just want to put that
Oh,
out
yeah.
there. You
Like, you
know,
mean not just flying to games, but
yeah,
like traveling on the court,
on the
calls
court.
that don't get called. Yeah.
A lot of traveling happening in those NBA games. Okay, so all right, Kentucky beats Florida. You know, at Kentucky, they seem to be the real deal there. LSU beats Ole Miss. No, I'm sorry. Ole Miss beats LSU. Lane
Yes.
Kiffin getting it done there. So, any comments on those games, or we got some upcoming games to talk about as well?
Well, yeah. I mean, first of all, Lane Kiffin, you know, I like Lane. We may have talked about this last week. You know, I mean, I think he's good for college football because he's not standard. You know, he's not. That's why I think
Oh yeah,
Dion's great for college football. He's different. You know, he's who he is, but Lane a lot of times, you know, can't get out of his own way. You know, and so last week he's poking the bear, Nick Saban, about the defense and who's calling, and and they throttled last week. 10 points, couldn't do anything, couldn't run, couldn't throw. Now they come out against LSU and they set a school record for 711 yards, right?
insane.
Or a ridiculous amount. And both teams were unbelievable on offense. Neither team played defense in the game. Neither one.
Yeah,
You know, Jaden Daniels, the quarterback for LSU, he had over 500 yards of total offense himself. I mean, he's been playing great all season, but unfortunately for LSU, they have not played good defense at all, and they've got 2 losses. Now, granted, the 2 teams they lost to are both good football teams, Ole Miss and Florida State, but 2 losses nonetheless.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right, so upcoming games. I believe the game you're doing, I think, is at Michigan at Minnesota.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Minnesota, I feel like they've, you know, not a whole lot going on there, maybe.
No, they've fallen off. You know, PJ Fleck has done a really good job there. And I think they won 9 games last year, and maybe 9 the year before. But I knew they'd fall off a little bit this year. They lost their quarterback who had started for a long time. They lost a great running back. They won their first game against Nebraska, and Nebraska kind of gave it to them with turnovers. And then they won a good game. Minnesota won a big game, needed to win last week. They beat Louisiana, who's a good football team. It was a non-conference game, and they were coming off of back-to-back losses, one of them being to Northwestern. Northwestern beat them in overtime at the end of the game. So that was
everybody beats Northwestern. What was that? I mean, you know, that's a tough loss right there.
Right, very tough loss. So, but they bounced back with a win over Louisiana. but they'll have their hands full with Michigan because
Yeah.
Michigan is they're a well-rounded team. I don't see any weaknesses in their team. Their defense is playing lights out. Um, Although I don't know, their non-conference schedule was pretty weak, but they finally
Hmm.
played at Nebraska and just drilled Nebraska, and so
Yeah. Yeah.
their defense is really good. J.J. McCarthy is an outstanding quarterback, dual threat guy, and they just bludgeon you to death with their run game. I mean, Blake Corum's back after his injury from last year. Their offensive line is great again, and they just wear you down and wear you out,
Yeah.
at some point. So, but it'll be good to get eyes on Michigan. I've seen Ohio State, I've seen Penn State, I've seen Maryland, and I'm looking forward to seeing Michigan in person on Saturday.
It is kind of fun to see a team like Michigan just kind of pummel teams like that in the trenches and just run it down people's throats. It's old school, just line them up and just get after it. And I'm a big fan of Blake Corum. I like the way he runs the ball.
Oh,
Of
yeah.
course, he's got a great offensive line in front of him too, but he's a dynamic runner. Makes plays out in the field as well, out in the open. So yeah, I love watching them play. So that'd be a good statement game for Michigan if they can come out there and just whip
Yeah.
up on Minnesota. So Maryland's at Ohio State. Is there an upset alert here, Maryland?
Well, I'll tell you what. We did Maryland a couple weeks ago in week 2 when they were playing Charlotte, and Mike Loxley, who I really like, the head coach at Maryland. For the first time, he did this at the media days in Indianapolis, and he's repeated it. He says this is the first time in 5 years that I can honestly say that we are in a position to try to compete for a Big Ten championship, and that means you got to take care of business with the 3 big boys, Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State. Well, they get their first test this week. Now, I think they got a legitimate shot because for a couple reasons. Number one, they played Ohio State really good last year and then lost it in the fourth quarter. But they scored 30 some points against Ohio State last year. That's number one. Number two, they have the most experienced quarterback in the Big Ten, and Talia Tungavailoa, who's playing very well. All right. So he's broken every Maryland passing record that there is. He's started a lot of games. He's seen everything. He's a good passer, but he also is nifty and can make plays with his legs and extend plays. And then the third reason is, and this is what surprised me the most when I did their game and studied them on film, their defense is good. Their defense is better than I thought they were. They've got 2 great safeties, that kind of anchor their defense. Their middle linebacker is one of the best players in the Big Ten as a sophomore. So I think they got to feel good about their chance to go in there. Ohio State got the week off, so they had a chance to come down off of the high of beating Notre Dame, kind of get, back to normal. And the good thing for Ohio State is coming out of this bye and out of the Notre Dame game, people aren't going to have the questions they had about Ohio State. There were a lot of questions, is this the right quarterback? What's wrong with the offense? Are they going to be able to win all these games? Well, they proved something, and he proved something in South Bend. Now, when they come out of this bye, they won't have to answer all. I mean, people will look at Ohio State differently based on what they did 2 weeks ago. So, but I do think Maryland has a chance to go in there and compete if Talia plays the way he's capable of playing.
Yeah. Well, for those listening or watching, one of us on this podcast watches game film and one of us does not. You guys can guess which one is which. But as a casual observer, and I look at, and I love the Tagovailoa family and what they do and stand for, and the way that those guys play football. Maryland, I think, looking big picture, could go to a great 10-2 type season, but I think it's going to be tough for them to beat Ohio State. If it was a home game, maybe, but I think with Ohio State in Columbus there, and then having the off week to nurse some injuries and just get healthy,
Right.
I think they'll come out and take care of business. But it's cool what Maryland's doing. So,
Yep.
You mentioned Notre Dame at Louisville. We talked about that a little bit. Going to be a fun game. Another interesting game I put on our list here is Syracuse at North Carolina.
Yeah.
Just because I feel like Syracuse may be an underrated team that people are maybe sleeping on, and they could surprise some folks and probably get a win nobody's expecting. I don't know if it's this week with Carolina or if it's another week, but I think they're going to sneak on some people.
Well, I tell you, I mean, Syracuse is a good football team. They just lost their first game of the season this past Saturday,
Yeah.
but they're a good football team. We saw them a couple weeks ago, and they were very impressive in their game against Purdue. Garrett Schrader, the quarterback, is a big guy. He's a good runner. He's gotten better as a passer. I think their defense is really good. Rocky Long is the defensive coordinator, a very interesting guy. He's like 74 years old, and he was a former head coach out west of like New Mexico, and just like didn't want to be a head coach anymore. Just wanted to coach ball. So he became a defensive coordinator again, and then Dino Babers hired him at Syracuse. So a really interesting guy who's doing a great job with their defense, and so yeah. North Carolina was off last week, so they didn't play. Of course, when you got a guy like Drake May, you got a shot against anybody. And
Yeah.
again, I'll say the same thing about North Carolina, at least to this point, which has been one of the most surprising things. The same thing I just said about Maryland is their defense has played really well. Everybody knew they would be good on offense with Drake May, but starting with the week one when they beat South Carolina and they had a bunch of sacks and tackles for loss, they're an aggressive defense that has played really well so far to this point in the season. But that'll be a good test with the Syracuse team that's coming off their first loss, but is very capable of winning that game.
Yeah, absolutely. I happen to think North Carolina is just, I don't know if I'm just pulling for them for some reason, but I feel like they're the best team in the ACC maybe, and I'd love to see them go all the way in their
Wow, you
conference.
think they're better than Florida State?
I do. I actually think I think if you put them head to head, I think UNC somehow finds a way to win that game. I don't know. I don't know why. I just
Yeah.
Florida
Well,
State
you're a
is
football
solid.
expert. You're a football expert, and so that's your expert opinion.
Well, I didn't want to say it, but it's true. I am an expert. You know, I mean, all Todd has is 100 years of experience doing this, and me, I'm new. I'm just a comedian, but uh, I like UNC. Here's what really goes on. Todd is at the beginning of the year, I make some outlandish picks about who I think is gonna end up going
Yeah.
really far, and UNC
Okay.
was one of those picks, and so I
Okay.
got to stick. I got to stick to it. I don't want
Gotcha.
to abandon my
Right.
pick, so I'm just gonna
Yeah.
then hang on. Yeah,
Okay. You know why I like North Carolina? I
the baby blue.
love the baby blue. I just think it's
Yeah,
the best. It's the best color on a uniform anywhere. Love it.
it is great, and they call it Carolina blue. I
Yeah.
think,
Right.
right? Yeah, I
Yeah.
said baby blue. Sorry, guys, they're
Yeah.
Carolina
Carolina.
fans.
Yeah.
Yeah, their own
So
blue.
here's another good game. We've hit on all the big games. Another game that I think is going to be good, and it always has drama because of the two head coaches. Is Alabama at Texas A&M?
Yeah,
And it's an important game in the West, especially with LSU already having a loss. Ole Miss has a loss. Neither one of these teams have a loss in conference. They both lost out of
yeah,
conference games. Alabama lost to Texas. Texas A&M lost to Miami. And A&M has been playing pretty good football since that loss. And so this is shaping up to be this will be a really important game. Alabama seems like they finally decided that Jalen Milroe is the quarterback that's going to give them the best chance with his dual threat ability. He played pretty well last week and the week before, and I think their defense is really their defense looks like an older version of Alabama defense. They're pretty
yeah.
nasty on that side of the ball. So that I'm looking forward to that matchup as well. Of course, Jimbo and Nick, and all their pleasantries that they exchange with each other. So, and Bobby Petrino's in the mix too now. Which he's
Good
kind of light
grief,
rod too. So yeah,
Bobby Petrino,
yeah,
man, it just the guy just keeps coming back into football somehow.
yeah,
And he's
yeah.
got a great offensive mind. I mean, he knows what he's doing. I suppose. I don't know, but that'd be a cool game.
Yep.
I have no idea. It's a toss up in my opinion. I think home field advantage for A&M is certainly a real thing, but I'm looking forward to Kentucky at Georgia as well. I don't think Kentucky will be able to survive there in Athens,
Yeah.
but it'll be a good test for Georgia to see how close that game is. If they're able to blow Kentucky out, I mean, I think it's like, ooh, all right, Georgia's maybe as good as, for me. And like you talk about the AP poll rankings, I don't have a vote. Nobody cares what I think, but I posted anyways who I think my top teams are. I'm just going to keep Georgia number one, and I guess everybody
Yeah.
will until they lose, right? I mean, they're the
Yeah.
reigning champs. You got to keep them there. So,
Well, and because there is nobody else out there that looks any better or more dominant than them, So yeah, you keep them
yeah,
there and see what happens. Now, coaches love this. Kirby is probably. I bet he just was smiling to himself the whole way home from Auburn, right? Because coaches, when you have an undefeated team, a team that hasn't lost in like over a year, uh,
mm,
you have to find ways to keep them motivated, to push the right buttons of don't get complacent, don't take anything for granted. We need to get better or we're going to get beat. So the thing he's going to harp on this week is Auburn ran the ball for over 200 yards against Georgia last Saturday, right? So now you
right.
got a team in Kentucky coming in there, and they want to run the football because that's what they do best. So Kirby will be able to take that, put the film on, and just get on, just chew some rear end all weekend about how bad they are stopping the run. So I would expect to see a better defensive effort against the run this Saturday against Kentucky.
Yeah, as good as Kentucky did in the run game against Florida this past week, it almost could be a negative thing for them going into
Yeah.
Georgia, because Georgia's going to say, "Oh, okay, we struggled with it. You guys did it. We're going to be ready." And I mean, Kentucky's guy had 200 yards before halftime or
Yeah.
something
Had 200
ridiculous.
at
I mean,
halftime. Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Finished with
crazy.
280. Yep. Liam Cohen is the offensive coordinator, and he's really a good football coach. I mean, he did
Yeah.
a great job 2 years ago, and then he left and went back to the NFL. And Kentucky's numbers and productivity dropped way down. Even though they had,
Mm,
a first round or, a big time quarterback, their numbers went
mm,
down. And then he came back to Kentucky again this year. They got
mm.
a different quarterback who transferred from North Carolina, Devin O'Leary, who's a good player.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden their offensive production and numbers are way back up again. So
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. It'll be fun to see. Okay. So you mentioned earlier Alabama with Jalen Milroe. They tried out some quarterbacks. Auburn's still kind of using two quarterbacks, right? They got Robbie Ashford and Peyton Thorne both. What's your thought on the two quarterback philosophy, and how long can you sustain that?
Yeah, I mean, I've never been a big fan of two quarterbacks. Another one of the sayings that people say around football is if you have two quarterbacks, that means you don't have any, because you typically pick one and go with them. But the only time I think it makes any sense at all or can be okay is if they're very different in their styles. If they're
Mm,
different in their styles and you can do different things with them, now you give a defense more they have to prepare for in a short week. There's only so much practice time you have. And so if you can give a defensive coordinator more on his plate that he has to prepare for with two different quarterbacks, then that can be effective. But I've always preferred having one guy so you don't have to have a guy looking over his shoulder wondering, if I make this mistake, am I coming out or am I staying in? So I don't like that part of it. But
yeah.
if you got a fastball and a curveball and they're both can help you, then I'm okay with that.
Sure. Yeah. And I guess that may be the case there in Auburn, possibly. Um, and okay. Well, Colorado, they're 3-2
Yeah.
now.
hmm
How many games do they win? If you're gonna, can you give us a number? What do you think?
Well, I'd have to look at the rest of their schedule. I mean, I know they're probably got a couple more tough games on the slate, but they're not going to all be like the last two. I mean, they faced
Yeah.
Oregon and USC, which they weren't going to match up well in those two games. They almost pulled the miraculous comeback and win. I think Colorado will win at least 6 games.
Mm-hmm.
I think they can win 3 more for sure, which would probably
Mm-hmm.
get them a bowl game, and they might even win 7. I mean, and the reason I
Yeah.
say that is, Shador Sanders is the real deal. I mean, he's really a really good quarterback. They had some freshman wide receiver who just kind of emerged on Saturday that is going to be a star, and they'll get Travis Hunter back here in another week or two, who's one of the most dynamic players in college football on both sides of the ball. So I do think they'll win at least 6 games. Which, when you consider that they won one game last year and all their losses were by like an average of almost 30 points a game, it's an amazing turnaround that Dion's created there.
Yeah, and their one win last year was an overtime. It took them overtime to get that one win,
Yeah.
I believe. So yeah, it was a ruck up. Well, they got Arizona State, which could be a win. They got Stanford, which should be a win. UCLA, which will be maybe a toss up. They got Oregon State, um, Arizona, Washington State, and Utah. So yeah, that's they're gonna have to fight for those
Yeah.
6 games
Oh yeah.
even.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
no doubt
Yep, they
about it.
sure will. But I mean, again, they're pretty good. They're a good football team in a lot of ways. They're not particularly strong in the trenches, but they're skilled. They're as skilled as anybody that's left on their schedule.
Any other college football things? I got a couple NFL questions just for the heck of it here at the end. What else you got college football wise?
I think that's all I've got college wise. Yeah, I think that's all I got college wise. What do
Yeah,
you got?
well, a couple things about I just I watched the game last night with Zach Wilson and the Jets. It was
Yeah,
really cool to see Zach Wilson have such a great game.
yeah,
And I feel bad for him because he had one mistake where he dropped the snap, and it
yeah,
just and he owned it, which I thought was super mature of him to do.
yeah.
And he said he lost the game for them, which is not true. I feel like no one play, I don't think, makes or breaks a game. Like, I always feel bad for kickers when they miss a kick, and it's like, well, if we'd score more touchdowns early on, we wouldn't have to rely on one kick at the end, to win the
Right.
game. So, you can't do that. But I think it was a pretty cool game, him and the Chiefs. And so, two questions: do you think Zach Wilson can really step up and lead the Jets to a pretty decent season, or is this a one game wonder?
Well, look, the kid's obviously very talented. I mean, the Jets
Yeah.
felt that when they drafted him, before they went out and got Aaron Rodgers. His development and his progress has not been as fast as maybe they wanted, but I think that was a huge step forward last night prior to the fumble. So I think they all have to be
Mm.
feeling a lot better about him, coaches and players, and his ability to play. This is a team that has got some wideouts. I mean, Garrett Wilson is an elite player, former Ohio State receiver. They got some runners, and they got a really good defense. So if he can continue to play at that kind of level, and hopefully Aaron Rodgers is around and will help him and mentor him and tutor him, then he might be okay.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, the game, folks are talking about Taylor Swift being there. Of course, that's what everybody's talking about now when the Chiefs are playing. Apparently, Kelsey had dropped a pass, which he hardly ever does. Mahomes was not on his game. You got celebrities up in the box, Taylor Swift up there jumping around. Is Taylor Swift a distraction for the Chiefs team, you think?
No, I don't think so.
No.
No, I mean, it's everybody's having fun with it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's affecting Travis Kelsey in any way. I mean, he's kind of his own guy anyway, kind of a loose cannon type dude, but a great player.
Mm.
And he's got to be thrilled because ever since she came into the picture, like his merchandise and stuff is like up 400%. I mean, so he's killing it right now, in a lot of different ways. So,
That's right.
I think it's funny because they're having now to figure out, like, do some football 101 kind of teaching for the Swifties, so that they can understand what the game's all about, because they're obviously starting to pay attention to NFL football now because of their leader.
I love it. We got more
Yeah,
more fans to watch
yeah,
football,
that's
new
right.
fans. Okay, other NFL notes I had there is just, Mac Jones and the Pats. Seems like there's a lot of people talking about. You're a quarterback, so I always want to know your thoughts on when quarterbacks are struggling, especially with the kind of pressure they're under. I mean, what
Yeah.
that's got to be tough for them. I mean, you guys playing for Bill Belichick, who's never happy about anything in life, it seems like. So, what would you say to Mac Jones if you were able to talk to him? Say, hey, this is my encouragement for you.
Well, I mean, a game like that, you got to kind of flush as quick as you can, and you have to do whatever you can to maintain your confidence. And the great thing about football is you get a chance to come back out the next week, and try
Mm.
to make up for it. So, it's not all him. They have not looked good as a team, really, and so this is uncharted waters and different territory for not just him, but also for Bill Belichick, and this coaching staff. So I
Yeah,
know there's a lot of people think it's all on the quarterback, and but it never is. It never is. Now, can he play better? Absolutely. And he's going to
sure.
need to play better.
Yeah. Yeah. I know the quarterback takes the brunt of the hits for folks. So he's the leader of the team and he's the quarterback.
Yeah.
But a lot of interceptions, as you probably know, you could attribute to a lot other things than just, oh, that was a horrible
Sure.
pass. No, it was a route was not run properly or who knows what. So, how many interceptions percentage wise would you say are a quarterback's fault versus it being another reason?
Oh,
Is there a
I
number?
mean, I would say over 50%. It's a quarterback's fault.
Sure.
Bad decision of when to throw it, where the ball's placed, the timing of the throw. There's more factors that would be on the quarterback. Now,
Mm-hmm.
receiver, if it goes off his hands, protection breaks down, quarterback's arm gets hit right as he throws it. That's not all on the quarterback. But I'd say more times than not, the higher percentage would be on the quarterback. So probably,
Yeah.
I would say maybe 60-40, 70-30, something like
Yeah.
that. That would
Yeah.
be my.
That's still significant though, of a
Yeah.
number of, that it wouldn't be on the quarterback. And it's
Right.
like, from a fan's perspective, every interception is on the
Right.
quarterback and they're like,
Right.
so they're
Yeah.
always fussing. Fans are, okay. Here, I got time for a little segment at the end here that I'd like to call some random questions that I just came up with.
Okay.
So here we go. What is the best thing you ate this week
Oof, this week.
or recently?
Yeah. Okay, so I would probably say the tacos I had last night from a place called Puerta, which is a little short walk up from our house here in Charlotte. It's a relatively new place that opened up, and you can order. It's all like small plates kind of, but this one, they offer you can get 3 tacos, bunch of choices of what with some rice and beans. So I got a crispy fish, a like a shrimp, and then a carne asada. 3 tacos, and all outstanding, and they go really good with tequila also. So very good.
Just if anybody's wondering, yeah.
Yeah.
So you've heard, yeah, for sure. That's good. I had a Saturday, the tailgate I was at. I was fortunate enough to be part of the Hoskins tailgate there in Knoxville, and they had some chicken legs, nothing but no other part, just all chicken legs. And I'm not sure how they made them. I have no idea how they made it. They're grilled, I think, and they had it was some of the best chicken I'd ever had in my life. It was a little bit spicy. I ate a bunch of them, swallowed them down with some cold beer, and it was dynamite. So, yeah. All right. This could be a debate between you and me. We're going to find out where you land on this huge issue. Which superpower is better, flying or invisibility?
I would go with flying.
I knew it. I knew you'd say flying. Why? Why flying?
The flying just looks so cool. Like when you see a hawk or an eagle, or just so majestic and just chilling, and I think it would be very cool to do that. And invisibility seems kind of creepy to me. That's like you would be able to do creepy things, and that's why I don't know that I would like that.
I would go with I've always wanted, being able to fly would be amazing. Invisibility would be cool just because I would want to be able to get out of situations I didn't want to be in. That was kind of my thing. I could kind of run, I could kind of just zoop and just kind of get out from somewhere I don't want to be or conversation I don't want to be in. So
Remember the old Snickers commercial? The old Snickers commercial was like, need to get away, because they did something or did something stupid. Yeah.
That's right. I would eat a Snickers every day if it gave me invisibility and I could just, get out of a situation. Yeah. That'd be good. Last question. How do you feel about tags being in the back of T-shirts?
What? Tags?
I take tags.
I take them out. Yeah, I take them out.
Do you cut them out?
Yeah.
Okay.
I rip them out or cut them out because they're very annoying,
They are. Yeah. I cut it out of this shirt myself and it just made me think about, why do we still have tags in shirts? Like there are tagless shirts now. but some people still want to do the tag thing. Why haven't we moved on
Yeah.
in our culture with this?
Well, yeah, I don't know. Now, do you have any shirts, Lululemon shirts? Because I'm a big Lululemon fan of like
Okay.
athletic gear. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, and Lululemon shirts, they have a tag on the back that's about this long. Okay. But it's narrow and long and it rips out real easily. They know you don't want it there, so
Yeah.
it comes out very easily. And there's like a little marker, like a little material marker on the back. So that's the back of the shirt, even if it doesn't have a tag. So,
Exactly.
yeah. So that's awesome. But
that is good.
The problem is they charge like $75 for a workout t-shirt, which
Right.
sucks. That's a little overpriced for something you're going to sweat in. Yeah.
Yeah, but you got that NFL money from the years back, and you're in this sports broadcasting money. So my kids,
the NFL money,
Lululemon the other day, they went to the
is gone, by the way. But yeah. I'm staying afloat with the NBC money now, but the NFL money,
nothing.
Yeah,
that's good. Well, the only money I'm making is from this podcast, and we don't make any money from this podcast. So, Lululemon, call us. We could, with sponsorship right there. We got Todd Blackledge. Jim Harbaugh loves Lululemon, I think, as well. Maybe I heard. My kids went to Lululemon over the weekend. I gave them a couple $100, and they came back with like one item. I was like, golly. So, yeah. Well, we solved a lot of the world's problems today.
We did. Good show. And my battery's about to run out, so I think we timed it just about perfect.
Perfect timing.
Pretty soon it's going to be a black screen in front of you. So
it is. Well, thanks to our listeners, viewers. Make sure you keep watching Man in Black podcast. We'll be back next week with more wonderful commentary on college football and whatever else crosses our minds. See ya.
Bye.